everyone. Welcome to the Secondary Heroes podcast. We're talking Invincible. This is your host, Trevor, and joining me is...
Hi, I'm Michelle.
And so, we're doing a little bit more of secondary shorts, talking about things that we're just watching. Alex and his buddy Jimmy did one, so I figured I would do one with Michelle, because we just watched Invincible. And apologies at the outset, we don't have the fun blood splatter on the title card of Invincible like the show, where the show, every single episode, it's going to take... and they leave it blank and it flashes Invincible on screen with the blood splatter. This is just audio based, so apologies for that. But hopefully you've seen the show. Again, we're going to start with spoiler-free take on the show. It's an Amazon Prime original. It's based on the graphic novel from Robert Kirkman. And then we're going to dive into spoilers, but we'll let you know when that spoiler portion is. So, with that, do you want to go first of your thoughts on the show?
Sure. So it was very surprising. I know I was a little reticent to start it initially. Although I love animation, so I know I was going to watch it eventually. I love superheroes and stuff like that. It was surprising. I didn't know it was by the same person that wrote The Walking Dead. So it took me a little by surprise at some moments. It was definitely twisty. But it really got me to care about the story and about the characters. And I love any kind of media that gets me to feel that way. So.
Yeah. They introduced all new characters. Like, they're all superheroes. We've seen the superhero story time and time again. And they just did a really good job of making you care about these brand new characters, full-on character development in an 8-episode series. And then they were able to also have those twists and surprises. Like, for the superhero genre, we know a lot of what Marvel and DC are doing. It plays out. There's a similar playbook when you go to see these movies. You kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. And this kind of did a different than the normal superhero storytelling. It shows you kind of the other side of being a superhero. It doesn't necessarily glorify and the idea of like, oh, when I grow up, I want to be Superman, or you want to be that superhero. It kind of shows you that not everybody is cut out or is destined to be a superhero. And that's just a really cutting way of looking at it. And I love the animation style. I loved all the gore that they included. It was almost over the top and unnecessary, and I laughed that it was so over the top gruesome. I know that wasn't for you.
It was not for me. No, I definitely was a little too gruesome for me, especially because we like to eat it while we were watching dinner. Not a big fan of that. But yeah, I mean, it's fun with animation because you can get away with that stuff, and it's not a horror movie. Like, if you do that kind of stuff in, like, you can't do that kind of stuff with Marvel or DC.
Or live action, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, you just can't because it'd be rated R, be a horror movie, and they don't want to do that. But with animation, you can get away with a lot more, and they do. They definitely do. They get away with a lot.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know what the rating is on this, but if you do have younger kids, this isn't like a...
This is not a show for them.
Yeah.
This is definitely for adults, an animated show for adults. So, like, if you... Yeah.
Yep. So I would say definitely if you have even a remote interest in the superhero genre and you want a different take than what we've seen time and time again, give Invincible a watch. Have Prime. Prime has some really good stuff on it. It doesn't have as many things as Netflix, but it does have some really good stuff, and Invincible is right there at the top for me.
Yeah.
Cool. So that means it's time for our socials. Be sure to follow at Secondary Heroes on every form of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course, go over to YouTube, like and subscribe our videos like this one. All the things that we're offering, our new secondary shorts and our weekly podcasts and talking about the latest hits like Loki and Falcon and Winter Soldier and Mandalorian and WandaVision. And all those things are Disney Plus things. We need to really bridge beyond that. That's why we're talking about Invincible on Amazon Prime. But all of it, it's free to you, and it's priceless to us when you leave us a review and care about what we're doing and just show us any kind of interest or attention or interaction. It means the world to us. Cool. So, spoiler time. If you haven't seen Invincible yet, you can pause now and come back to this podcast later, but the main takeaway is watch Invincible. And so, spoiler time. I think we're just going to go, we're not going to go episode by episode because there's 8 episodes, and we tried to do that for Stranger Things Season 3, and the podcast took 2 hours or something. It was like our longest podcast ever. So we're just going to talk about highlights and lowlights, overarching story, character developments, and all that good stuff. So.
Where do we start? Start with Mark?
Well,
Invincible, title character?
I mean, I really want to just start with how good the voice cast is. They did an amazing job. So every single character, or almost every character, comes on and you're like, I've heard that voice before. And that's really fun because it's just their voice. Like, I remember when they were doing 24, they're like, we don't want famous actors on the show because it kind of takes you out of it. But that's because you see their faces. When you just hear their voices, you can kind of get lost. Like, J.K. Simmons has such a distinct voice. He plays Omni-Man that you can still think of him in those, like, State Farm commercials or J. Jonah Jameson or whatever he's done. But, like, everybody, Walton Goggins is in this, Sandra Oh is in this, and Mahershala Ali's in it, Ezra Miller's in it, Zazie Beetz is in it.
Stephen Yeun.
Yeah, Stephen Yeun plays Mark, and they get really fully into their roles, so they just bring so much character and charisma to their individual roles that you kind of lose who they are. Like, the first episode, you hear them like, oh, it's that person, and then by episode 3 or 4, they're the character in Invincible.
I guess I don't have that much of an issue with it because most of these people, when I have heard them, it's been as voice actors. So like Stephen Yeun, he did escaping me. I can't remember. Netflix.
I don't know. I only know him as Glenn from Walking Dead.
Keith. He was Keith. Okay. Oh, it'll come to me. Anybody listening to this or watching this is like, I know you're yelling at me because you know exactly what I'm talking about. And Voltron. I knew it would come to me. He was Keith in Voltron.
He's Keith in Voltron?
He's Keith in Voltron,
I didn't know
yeah. So, like, I've heard a lot of these. And there's, like, a lot of voice actor hard hitters in this, too. So, like, Mark Hamill's in this, and he's been doing voice acting for a long time. Greg Griffin's in this. And so there's just people that, you know, if you watch a lot of animated stuff, you're going to recognize a lot of voices, too. So even if they're not like bigger name actor people.
Yep. And so I think we should start with Mark's character development. So when you first meet Mark, his dad is essentially, so Omni-Man is kind of the overarching thing. He's the Superman in the Invincible universe, and that's Mark's dad. So imagine if your dad is Superman and you're a regular person. At least he's been a regular human being for 18 years. And now all of a sudden he gets his powers. And this changes kind of everything. It changes the dynamic with his dad and the dad's dynamic with the entire planet.
And honestly, I'll never forget, like, when he gets his powers, there's this weird switch in Omni-Man's character that before then you don't really see, but it's like, they keep waiting. It feels like they're waiting for Mark to get his powers, and then as soon as he does, like, Omni-Man starts acting different. And it's definitely, like, I felt like it was very noticeable. Mm-hmm. Like, it was definitely like, you're like, okay, this is weird.
Yeah, like, weird. He's like a super friendly, nice, like, he's like Superman. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, Clark Kent's a nice guy when he's not being Superman. That's how Omni-Man is. He's family man, he has the wife and son, and he takes care of everything. He goes and does his work. You know, he goes and fights monsters, and then he comes back, and he still has his home persona. And then Mark gets his powers, and that home persona kind of leaves. And he's constantly in the fight kind of ideal.
Yeah, it's really hard to even nail down a word for how his whole attitude shifts, but we can come back to that. We're talking about Mark.
Right.
So Mark and his character development. I thought Mark initially, he was very much kind of what you expect for, if you watch a lot of anime, he was very much for me like what you expect a protagonist to be. He was a little whiny sometimes, like he's not always super, super likable, but he's relatable in that way. So I felt like he very much became that kind of character. So he was easy to relate to, even though obviously none of us have Superman as a father. But a lot of people, you know, they have parents that they model themselves after, or that they feel a lot of pressure from, or anything like that. So I feel like he was super relatable from the get-go. And, you know, there's a trajectory that you imagine for these characters where you're like, okay, well, this is going to be a show where we're going to see him succeed. Like, he's going to actually become invincible. And it's just funny how much that's not true. Because he fails continuously.
Right, that's kind of the main takeaway for me from the show. The biggest spoiler is that Mark fails time and time again. Every episode essentially ends with Mark failing. Like, you're like, this is the time. He's going to turn it around. He needed those failures to succeed. He never succeeds in this entire series.
In the entire show. Doesn't succeed once. Like, every single time, it's like...
He just fails spectacularly up each time.
Like, I keep thinking of... There's this big fight scene against... Machine Head, and he brings in all these lackeys, like all these supervillains. He brings in the Battle Beast, which is like this crazy cat
guy.
monster that Trevor was obsessed with. Every episode after that, he's like, bring back the Thundercat.
The Thundercat guy dominated. The Thundercat guy needs to fight Omni-Man. We need a sequel where the Thundercat guy fights Omni-Man.
But that whole thing, and it's like, at first it's just Mark and Titan, that's his name. And they're fighting these guys, and then the new Guardians of the Globe come in, and you're like, okay, it's gonna turn around, but they all just get like beat.
Again, you just love it.
I love to. I'm sorry. They just get beat up so badly. It's hard to talk about this show. Okay, they curse in the show.
That's fair.
Okay. Like you're like, he's gonna die because this show does not pull its punches. Pun intended. It really doesn't. Like, anybody could die at any time, even the title character.
So I think that's what sets the tone is the first episode. I think that's what drew me in more than anything else. Like, the biggest spoiler is if you go into this show without knowing what happens at the end of episode 1, it's like, whoa. Because they set up a world where there's the Justice League, and they call them the Guardians of the Globe. And they show them, they come and save the White House, they fight these alien guys, and then there's Superman. Omni-Man is like kind of separate from the Guardians of the Globe. And the whole episode plays out, you learn about Mark, he gets his powers, and then the credits start playing. And you're like, okay, I see how this kind of show is.
You're like, oh, this is going to be a show about him becoming a superhero, you know, like all the trials he's going to face and getting there. Okay, that's what this show is going to be.
And then the credits run for a couple, not even like a couple minutes, and then it comes back. And we're at Guardians headquarters, and then Omni-Man comes in.
Oh, but before all that, though, they show all the Guardians. They show all the Guardians outside of their life. They
show
they're
doing
with
everything.
Their families, like how their lives outside of being a Guardian of the Globe.
Yeah.
So, you know, these characters that you've seen for like 30 seconds in all of the first episode, you're like, okay, all right. So, you know, they have wives, they have, you know, jobs, they have things they do outside of this. They're people beyond being these superheroes. So for that first moment, that's what was most shocking for me, is they really develop a connection with these characters, and then they all get summoned to their headquarters.
Yep. And that's like, it was just an alert or whatever, and they're like, what's going on? I don't know, I didn't call this. And so they all say they didn't call this. And then the main guy who notices is Red Rush, who's the Flash alternative. And Omni-Man comes flying in, and he's about to punch one of the guys in the face, you know, full on Superman blast to the face, and Red Rush pulls him out of the way. And then you see Omni-Man goes to town on literally all the Guardians of the Globe. Are there 7 of them? There's Darkwing, War Woman, Aquarius, Red Rush, Green Ghost, Martian Man, and Immortal. So there's 7 guys, or 7 superheroes. And Omni-Man's going to fight all 7 of them at once. And so, again, these are Justice League alternatives. There's the Aquaman guy, there's the Green Lantern version, there's the Wolverine guy, which is not totally DC.
He's
but
like
he's definitely a Wolverine guy. Like I said, there's the Batman guy, there's Wonder Woman, and then there's the Flash guy. And so they have them all fighting Superman. And it kind of plays out like Zack Snyder's Justice League, except there's actual stakes and devastation. Because that was my biggest problem with Zack Snyder's Justice League, is when Superman goes and fights everybody, and everyone just flies into stone, they fly into buildings, they don't have a nick or cut on them. There's no stakes at all to that fight sequence. This has all the stakes. There's blood flying out, there's bones cracking. It gets
Eyeballs
really
popping.
visceral when Omni-Man grabs Red Rush and literally squishes his skull. The brain pops and flies into his face. And then he grabs Darkwing, who's essentially Batman. He rips out his spine, I'll call him, and just leaves his laying dead sack there. There's that one, the Green Ghost guy, he like wraps around it and he like tears it, he becomes like a fabric or whatever.
Honestly, right around the head squishing is when I had to look away. It was too much for me. So I was like, it was... all of it. It was like, there's a part where Red Rush is punching him, and you watch his hands. He's actually doing some damage, but his hands start breaking from punching him so quickly. And like the whole time, like his head is getting,
It's just so visceral and so real. It shows that, again, this show is not messing around. They just killed off 7 prime superheroes.
Yeah, like the 7 superheroes.
Yeah, in the first episode. Because again, Wonder Woman, she has like a Thor style hammer, and she actually does damage to Omni Man. Again, Omni Man probably would have lost this fight, but he took him by surprise because they do some damage on Omni Man. He's left in a coma afterwards, and they really get to him. But he had that one element of surprise that helped him overall. Get rid of all.
He was their friend. He was their comrade. Like he helped them save the planet. Probably
countless times.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to distrust him because they've been doing this for like 10, 20 years.
And then that happens.
And then Mark gets his powers.
And it's whatever. I remember we finished the first episode and I was like, is he being controlled? Like,
is there
what happened? Like,
mind control?
Did something get triggered when Mark got his powers and now he's like turning evil? Like, what is all this?
Yeah, is there some like desperation in his thing where he loses his powers because Mark got his powers? But it turns out it was none of that.
No, it wasn't. Although there are hints throughout the series. I remember the most being after the Flaxlands invaded, which was Mark's like first real fight. That's when they brought in like the teen fighters, the little like teen titans.
Yep, Teen Titans knockoff.
Which just to say that Adam Eve is probably my favorite character on the show. She's just so freaking cool. I just love her. Never mind that her costume is pink, but and I love pink. But she's just, her powers and everything are just super cool. But when they're fighting the Flaxlands and Omni-Man flies into their dimension, he gets locked there. At the very end, when they're sending him home, at one point he says, "Earth is not your planet to conquer." And when we got to the final episode, and can we just say, because we're not really talking, so the whole reason he's evil is he's there to colonize Earth. And there are hints to it. He talks about how basically he's from Viltrum, and he talks about how their people. It's funny because if you look at it from like a historical standpoint, if you look at like colonizers, it's a very similar way a colonizer would look at colonizing a third world country, where his people go out to these other planets. They send one to each planet and they help them. They make them better.
These people are weak. They don't have anything. Yeah.
They don't have anything. They don't have technology.
Yeah.
They don't like, so they need to be ruled. Very Loki thing. Right there. So, and that's what he reveals this whole thing is. And so now that Mark has his powers, they can do this together.
Right.
Conquer Earth for Viltrum together, because Mark is not a human. He's a Viltrumite. Even like 1% of his DNA could be Viltrumite and it makes him an entire Viltrumite. I thought that was really interesting that he's not like biologically a human at all.
It's not 50-50, yeah.
Yeah.
It's how strong Viltrum blood is. Yeah.
So, and the interesting thing I thought is that Omni-Man didn't take in, I mean, it really brings into the whole nurture versus nature kind of thing, where it's like, well, this is your nature. It's like, okay, but he was nurtured on Earth. Like his entire life has been Earth. It's been humans. It's been his human mother. That was devastating, by the way, when when Omni-Man said that he thought of his wife more as like a human pet. I thought that was so devastating. And she had to hear it.
She's sitting there listening to his whole speech to Mark, that everything over their entire relationship has been a lie. Yeah.
So, and then Mark is like, I'm human. He's like, this is my home. These are my people, and I'm going to defend it. But as we said, Mark always fails.
Mark got absolutely destroyed by Omni-Man.
As you would expect. The whole scene when they you thought it was hilarious. I couldn't watch. When he throws him into Chicago and just like, they freaking destroy
the sequence.
It's devastating with the train.
The subway station, and he holds Mark so the subway crashes around him, and they're invincible. So all the stuff just literally, the bodies turn into blood as they make contact, and it's a whole train full, and it's just so over the top, and it was cracking me up. There's just so much explosion of blood. It was like so overly top stupid. It just cracked me up. I understand the devastation of it and how gruesome it is, but
I guess it comes for me. It's like when I watch like Lord of the Rings and you see like the random like nameless soldier like get shot and like or beheaded or something. I'm like, oh, he had a family. Like that's where it comes from for me. Every time I watch something like this where you see like mass kind of stuff, it always gets to me. I always see the devastation of it, even though it's a cartoon. Obviously, they're not real, but I get really into stuff that way. So. For me, it was hard to watch. It was a lot. And like
if it was animals, it would have got to me more.
Yeah, even if they're animated animals.
Yeah.
Animals are harder for sure. but just seeing it, and like especially at the end, the whole like epilogue part of the episode, and they show like the new Guardians of the Globe and Adam Eve, and they're like they're like trying to help the people that are left, but like it's just body parts. And like I keep thinking of the mother and the daughter that are falling out of the building. He's holding on to them, and the building collapses, and you just see the mother's arm that he was holding.
Yeah, Mark,
and it's
Mark has the whole building collapse on him, and he looks down. He has her hand still, and
but it's just her arm.
Yeah,
and like you're never gonna see anything like this in any other kind of superhero media.
Yeah,
it's just like that's what it would be like if you had like these kinds of beings on our planet,
because
with
humans
these
are
kinds
so
of powers. We're so fragile.
It's like Omni-Man said. It's true. Everything that he said of how weak they are. They need, they blast all those rockets and all those special lasers.
Oh, yeah.
And he says that's just to mimic a fraction of our power. They'd have to do all of this.
I like when Cecil's like, that was a like what $200 billion nosebleed.
Yeah, 200 billion. Yeah,
like the most expensive nosebleed in history.
Yeah, that was funny because that was like when Iron Man does all that whole routine, and Thanos says, "You did all that for a drop of blood." It was the same thing where they sent everything at Omni-Man, and he gets a little bit of a nosebleed. Yeah. Omni-Man is definitely OP'd.
Oh, yeah.
That was definitely the takeaway. I mean, you brought up the nurture versus nature thing. And then there's the whole idea that in Viltrum, they literally trained everybody to fight each other. And the ones who won the fights, like, they killed a lot of their population because they found the best of their population, their society, and they sent those ones off.
Yeah, so it was the Thanos approach, but they literally just killed each other until there was like half the population.
Yeah.
And they were the strongest ones.
If he would have trained Mark like that, though, it would have been a different approach to conquering Earth. Like, he chose to nurture Mark.
Yeah, he chose to raise him as a human, which was his mistake, honestly, in the long run. You see that the whole thing ends where he says that thing to Mark. He's like, we live for thousands of years. He's like, who will still be here? All these people around you will die. Everything you know will be gone. And he's like, I'll still have you, Dad.
Yep.
And it's just like, and you see
It gets to
Omni-Man.
him.
Yeah, he has this whole like flashback of watching Mark when he's like 8 years old at a t-ball game, and he doesn't understand like why everyone's so excited. He thinks it's super boring. Like you see some of like how Omni-Man feels in that moment, like about like how stupid humans are.
Yeah.
And Debbie says this thing about seeing the world through your child's eyes, about how the joy they feel, you feel because they're feeling it. And you see Mark hits a home run, and you see Omni-Man smile, and it's this whole thing, and you realize that maybe a part of Omni-Man has become a little human because of his time on Earth, because of Mark and Debbie. And so then they come back to the present. Mark is like a bloody face in the side of a mountain, and Omni-Man just leaves. He just leaves.
Omni-Man was beating Mark to a pulp right then, and his face recognized.
Oh my god, you can't.
Yeah.
It's just
he had
bulbs.
all of the teeth were missing, just like because when he's little playing Little League, he has his teeth missing, and that just flashed for him. And yeah, Omni-Man leaves. This entire show ends with Omni-Man leaving Earth.
The only reason Earth survives is because he decides to leave.
Because he felt bad for Mark.
Yeah.
That's essentially.
And so you're like, okay, well, that's the end of the show. And you see them like putting everything back together. Mark is in a freaking coma. Everybody, like his girlfriend who, Amber, and his best friend, they know that he's that he's invincible now, and everything that he's been through. They stage Omni-Man's death. Like as a parent, his name is Nolan. They stage his human death. Obviously, the entire planet saw Omni-Man
become evil.
They
broadcast. So Invincible or Immortal comes back. The two clone guys bring Immortal back. All they had to do was attach his head back, and he had his Wolverine healing style power. So he comes back and he fights Omni-Man because he remembers that he killed the whole Guardians of the Globe. And so Omni-Man kills him, and it's broadcast on camera because they have the news copters there, and so everyone gets to see that Omni-Man
kill a Guardian of the Globe.
Yeah.
They see it happen.
This isn't like hearsay or anything. It's literally broadcast live in Times Square and everything.
Like, imagine seeing that. Imagine, like, seeing Superman kill Wonder
Wolverine,
Woman.
yeah.
Well, Wolverine would be weird. That'd be a weird crossover.
It
but
doesn't have to be. If it's our world, we can have.
That's
the
true. You
superheroes
can have
from
every
everybody,
superhero.
all
I
of
don't-
them. We don't have to have a specific brand for
a
our
specific
superheroes.
universe. But- yeah, it would just like I can't even. I'd feel terrified.
If you had a superhero, like any superhero kill another superhero, it's one thing watching a superhero kill a villain. If we had in a society where a superhero existed and there was any other superhero, it's no longer a hero.
Yeah, they're
And
now a
the-
supervillain.
The people, like, see how many people have like Superman shirts, and he's a fictional character. Imagine how many people would have Superman gear if he was a real entity on this planet.
That'd be terrifying. Like, honestly, Omni-Man is more powerful than Superman is.
He really is.
Because at least Superman has a weakness, and he has humanity. Like,
Well, it's because Superman's raised by humans.
Yes.
See, flips it where Superman's essentially raising a human. That's the distinction in how he acts.
so it'd be like if Superman's dad came to Earth first, and then he had Superman. So I guess that kind of makes Mark. No, even then, I guess Mark is the more Superman character long run.
Yeah.
But it's like they hint at that whole thing at the end of the Snyder Cut where like
Oh, the Kingdom
Lois
Come
dies.
universe.
Yeah, like Lois dies, and like because of that, Superman loses all his humanity, and that's when he becomes evil. It's just like Omni-Man doesn't have that humanity. He doesn't, to our knowledge, he has no kryptonite. He just is. Like, the only thing that can kill Viltrumite is another Viltrumite. So the only hope Earth has is Mark, which, like we said, Mark has failed at everything he's done. So I don't know. There's going to be a season 2. So, like, at the
It's
end...
probably been told in the comics at some point, but I'm not going to read them.
No, we're not going to spoil ourselves. But at the end of the episode, you see Seth Rogen has a character in this. I think he's one of the producers, too, of the show. He has a character named Alan the Alien. He's one of the first, like, otherworldly things that Mark fights early on, and you realize it's a test for Earth to make sure, like, some galactic coalition of planets, something like that.
Yeah.
And he comes back at the end, and he sits down with Mark, and Mark tells him the whole story of what happened. And he's like, wow. He's like, we've never had a Viltrumite on our side, because Mark is now on the side that's against Viltrum, because Viltrum is basically this Nazi Germany power that is taking over.
I mean,
the
they're
universe.
like the evil in Voltron. You know, what's his name? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
know what you mean.
Where they conquer like 1,000 different planets and stuff. Yeah, that's what Viltrum is.
I mean, it's evil in She-Ra too. Like, there's that evil of taking over the universe. Very popular.
Yes.
Very popular evil in
It's
all
hot
kinds
right
of
now.
media. Yeah. And that's what Viltrum is doing. But they're unstoppable. No one's ever been able to stand against them. Like, Alan the Alien even says that Viltrum took his planet and wiped out almost his entire race. Like, he's never met his parents.
Yeah, because they fought back. They wouldn't be
tried to- yeah.
subjugated. And so they destroyed
just
the whole
slaughtered.
planet.
Yeah,
They're
they
like,
just-
really?
So he said an army of Viltrumites is going to come to Earth now.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
So that looks like what we're going to be in store for in the future. So we'll see if Mark can really come into his own.
Because, yeah, one of my favorite parts about this show is that the end of every episode, since Mark failed, it left the door open for all these things. They're like,
Oh yeah,
he goes to Mars and he lets these like alien type of creatures go, just from the movie Alien, come loose with their little face huggers and everything, and he lets them go loose, and then he leaves Mars. And then there's the episode.
but the whole thing about basically it's like if one infects a human or anybody, it becomes like the host, and it like so I guess they're like these little brain guys, and they're harmless by themselves, but if one of them gets a host, it can control all the other ones.
Yeah.
And one infects a human that
One of the astronauts.
one of the astronauts that gets taken back to Earth from the Mars mission. And so that's one of the things that leave open-ended is that whole Earth alien Mars thing.
And then there's the episode with the Titan guy who's just like Luke Cage. He's voiced by Mahershala Ali, and he takes over as a crime syndicate boss now of like all of New York or whatever.
Yep.
And so they leave that open. And then there's the guy who creates those cyborg things. He's D.A. Sinclair, and he's voiced by Ezra Miller, which is funny because he's Flash from the DC movies. And they leave all, like, Mark fails every time. There's the Battle Cat guy. He leaves his portal. He has any chance to come back. And he's like, I need stronger opponents because he just devastated all these guys. And the epilogue of Invincible goes and shows all these things. Like, it shows the aliens are going wild on Mars.
And it shows the Flaxans, too.
Yeah.
Like, preparing to have another
Yeah, because
invasion
the
on Earth.
Flaxans are from episode 2. That's the first time Mark, so Mark was doing, street level crime.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the alien level threat. And he realizes that he's not gonna, he tries to save this old lady, and that's about all that he can do.
And she dies in the
Yeah.
hospital. That's when it really shows you, wow, not everyone. I wish they'd shown somebody, they showed it with Mark, but I really wish they'd shown somebody who had powers who realized they weren't cut out to be a superhero.
Because there's a lot of people with powers in this.
Yeah, there's it's
he
very
could have stumbled and met someone who's just working a 9-to-5 job, and they can do all stuff, and they're like, I couldn't be a superhero.
It reminded me a lot of Incredibles. It also reminded me of My Hero Academia because it's more, not as many. In My Hero Academia, it's more common to have powers than not have powers. It's definitely more common in Invincible to not have powers, but anybody could have powers. It's not genetic, definitely. They show Eve a lot with her family because her father disapproves of her being a superhero, and her parents are just normal people. So anybody could have powers, and it's just a matter of just because you have powers doesn't mean you're a superhero.
Yeah.
And I love that take on any kind of super universe. I really wish they'd explore it more. In anything, I know it's not super compelling in an MCU movie to have a character that doesn't want to be the superhero and fails at being the superhero. It could be a Disney Plus show. So I like that Invincible's doing it. But I would love to see that aspect explored more, to see more people with powers that realized saving the world is not for me. I don't have the stomach for it. I don't have the metal for it. It's just not.
It made me question if I had powers. Spider-Man is probably my favorite, and just because he's it feels like the most relatable. And I was like, Spider-Man goes through hell. He probably fails more than any other Marvel character. He probably he has so many arsenal of bad guys to deal with, and it's always taken up a notch. That's why they introduced the whole Spider-Verse and stuff, because he needs help, because they kept piling on his plate. I was like, I don't know if I could do what Spider-Man does. Even if I had exactly Spider-Man powers, I don't know if I could have the wherewithal that he does to keep going and keep getting up.
And it's funny because we just rewatched Spider-Verse, and you see Miles go through that too. Miles has that whole moment where he's like, I don't know if I can, I don't think I can do this. I can't be a superhero. I don't want it. And that's the whole thing. It's well, it's not your choice.
Yep.
And that sucks, honestly. If I got bitten by a spider, I'm sorry. I don't think I could do it.
You're not going to just be Spider-Gwen all of a sudden?
I just don't think I have it in me.
Yeah. I know, it's tough.
I think I might try, but the first time I fail, I don't know if I can get back up. And that's the whole thing with Spider-Man, is you gotta be able to get back up. I think with any superhero, you gotta get back up. You gotta keep going out there. And I just think the first time I can't save someone, or the first time I get beat up, or
you break bones in your butt,
yeah,
you're you're on life support for a week. Yeah,
so
that's gonna be tough to go back out there again.
Yeah, or something gets destroyed, anything, or there's fatalities, anything like that, and
fatality
where and anything where I couldn't save people. That's the whole point of being. That's why people want to be a superhero. It's the same reason people want to be policemen or firefighters or doctors. You want to save people. You want to help people. You can't always do it.
Failing is
a part of it. And if you can't,
I couldn't even be a vet because I couldn't watch animals die.
It's you can't always save someone. And that's why it takes a certain kind of person to do those very human, unsuperpowered professions, because not everyone can do it. And so I couldn't be a superhero. Just point blank. Couldn't do it.
That's a good question to everybody listening. Say you got your favorite superhero's superpowers. Do you think you had the actual intestinal fortitude and the strength of mind to be a superhero? It's not as simple as just having superpowers.
Yeah. And if so, what would your name be? Because
yes.
that was a big thing with markets. He's like, what is my name? What's my symbol? What's my name? That's a big thing with superheroes.
The costume design.
They really don't go into that with superheroes. It's you have to decide. Nobody else comes up with that for you. Batman, he picked all that for himself. He made that iconography for himself. Yeah. You have to decide what your name is going to be and what your symbol's going to be. And some of the superheroes in this have very questionable names.
There's the whole episode where they're trying out the new Guardians of the Globe, and they have this whole cast of potential people that it could be.
And a lot of them, it's weird because so Adam Eve, like her name is Samantha Eve, but it has her name in it. And then there's Rexplode. His name is Rex. There's Duplicate. Her name is Kate.
Yeah.
One of the new Guardians of the Globe is Shrinking Ray. Guess what her name is?
Ray.
Like, I get the puns, but you gotta. So. And that's a whole. We haven't touched on any of those other plot points. Anything like they had the whole side plot with Robot, like cloning himself a new body.
Robot. So Zachary Quinto did a really good job.
Yeah, I
voicing
loved Robot. He was great. I loved the like slightly sinister cast to him. You didn't really know what he was up to until it was done.
Yeah. It's that creepy cloning thing where he works with those other clones. Like we find out why those clones were broke out of prison. It was just so he could figure out a clone, and so he wants to transfer his mind to a human form, a flesh form, and it's all because he actually loves Monster Girl.
Yeah. More because her power is very interesting, where she transforms into a monster, very Hulk-like. But every time she does transform, she reverts backwards. She ages backwards.
She de-ages a week, right?
Yeah.
And so she's actually 24, but she looks like a 12-year-old.
Yeah. So, and like there's this whole like weird kind of dynamic between her and Rex, who looks like he's 8 to 10 years older than her, probably somewhere in there. And so that's the DNA that Robot takes, is Rex's DNA to
So
clone
Rex
himself.
is like the biggest prick on the show.
Oh my god, he is probably my least favorite character.
Yeah.
He is just like he's obnoxious. Like he's just plain obnoxious. And when he gets picked for the Guardians of the Globe team, I remember you were like, "Oh, that's why they picked him. He's going to clone him so then he has one that he can manipulate and control."
I thought that was a better storyline.
That was a better storyline. Just because Rex is so annoying, and his power honestly isn't that cool. Like when you see him fight the Flaxons in episode 2, he like really doesn't do much.
He throws a little bomb.
Yeah.
Discs.
He's like what's her name? From X-Men.
Who throws bomb discs?
No, she just throws like little sparkles. What's her name?
I don't know, Sparkle Thrower.
And people are all like people always make fun of her. They're like, what kind of is it Jamboree? I'm gonna look this up later. But like people have always like been like, well, what kind of superhero is that? That's exactly the kind of superhero that he is. And you're like, who would ever put him in the Justice League or the Avengers or anything like that? Like,
yeah, I thought Robot's goal initially was to get everybody's DNA and then put his mind in the whole team, and so he can control all of them, like it's all one wavelength. But Robot, it was showing his emotional side that he just cared about love, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, basically Robot was just a psychic link to a robot. Like the actual person that Robot was, his name is Rudy, was like this deformed little creature inside like the glass vial who like couldn't walk on his own, couldn't breathe air. He literally, like, at a point he breathes air and he's like, air literally burns my lungs. And so that's why he wanted a new physical form. That's why his brain had to be connected to a robot. And even when they make his clone, he gives the Mahler twins, as are their names, the Cloner brothers, and he gives them this thing to put in his brain so he can still have a psychic link to his robots, because he has no powers on his own. He's powerless. He's just super smart. They don't really have a superhero like that. This is somebody who's super smart.
No. Usually the super smart ones become villains. That's why it was interesting.
I mean, I guess he's kind of close to Iron Man, because at the end, when they do go fight, he's inside the robot himself. So I guess he's mostly like that, just lacking like the charisma of the character and the money. So, but he has the suit. That's all he has. He has the robots. What other plot point haven't we touched on, really? So there's all Adam Eve going off and doing her thing, just helping people, doing little things, helping people. Her power is very cool. So she manipulates atoms, which is where her name comes from. Play on Adam and Eve, obviously. But she has that whole thing going for her. I remember at first I thought it was just like pink force fields that she could throw up, but then you see her, she like changes, she like creates doors and buildings and things like that. So that's what she goes out and does. She helps crops grow. She undoes deforestation. She does crazy stuff like that. That's actually like, maybe it's not saving the day from aliens, but she's helping people and the planet and stuff like that. And she goes and like builds her like a tree house in the forest in the middle of nowhere. And maybe that's the kind of superhero I would be. not gonna fight the bad guys, but I'll fight the humans.
Change.
Yeah, I'll fight climate change. So that's her whole plot, and then there's the whole Mark being a high school teenager plot, trying to get a girlfriend.
Yeah. And messing up, like always being late because he's out fighting. Like Zazie Beetz voices his girlfriend Amber, and every single time he's like does as bad as you could and she keeps giving him chances until like one of the last few episodes, and it's literally when he runs away when there's a fight, and it's because he runs away to go change into his outfit and actually do the fight, and that's when she actually breaks up with him.
That was a hard episode because his best friend also finds out he's invincible in that episode, and his best friend is Will. He's played by Andrew Rannells, big Broadway star, which was interesting because he doesn't do a lot of voice acting, and he's super in love with this guy at the college. That's the whole reason they're there, and that guy gets taken by Ezra Miller's character to be turned into this cyborg, emotionless monster, basically. Reanimans, I think they call them,
which they use
later to fight
they send 3 to Omni-Man, and then in the epilogue you see that they're making an army of them because the one guy who runs the whole thing is called Cecil. He's like, he would be like running the Avengers or whatever. He's like a human counterpart to run the behind the scenes guy, and he tells Mark, he's like, those things really gave you a run for your money, and he hates Ezra Miller's character, but he sees it as a means to an end. That's how Cecil sees everything.
And that's how somebody running kind of organization like that has to be.
Because also at the end, Mark gets to go into that room where they're working on all this super advanced tech to do stuff, but you can't see it. They operate on a light that's not visible to humans.
Mm-hmm. And they're like you see them putting the Immortal back together, all that stuff. But back to the college episode. So that whole episode basically demonstrates what it's like to know a superhero, where Mark is trying to get Amber back, and so Will's like, I need your help, something's happened, and he's like, I can't come right now, it's fine. And because he doesn't come, now this guy that Will was in love with, he's gone. Like, they're never gonna fix him. Like, he's a monster forever, and Will's always gonna hold that against Mark. There's nothing around that. And you see Amber later, you find out Amber knows that he was Omni-Man in that moment. She's like, it was super obvious. She's like, I knew almost the whole time. It was more that you didn't trust me with that. You never told me.
Yep. It's always a trust thing.
It's always a trust thing in relationships.
It's funny about that because so that guy who Will liked, it shows how it's not just a romantic relationship. It's also just a best friend relationship. How a superhero can ruin all your relationships. But that guy, he's voiced by Jonathan Groff.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. And then also that guy's name is Ryan Sheridan. I just saw that. I was like, okay, cool. The one guy who shares my last name barely is in it, and he turns into some mindless robot. Also, Mark's last name is Grayson. Shout out to Dick Grayson.
Yep. So yeah, this show really just explores all those aspects. You see them in glimpses, I think, in a lot of superhero movies, like how being a super affects your relationships, like struggling with being a superhero. But obviously it's a movie. You only have so much time to tell the story. And at the end of the day, you want to make a sequel. So your main character's never really in danger. I think like Endgame and Infinity War were the 2 movies where it felt like, obviously in Infinity War when they all got snapped at the end, everyone knew they were going to come back.
It was too much.
To me, it was still emotional for me. I had a hard time with it, but again,
Endgame had a finality to
yes, Endgame had a certain finality to it, and before that, really, in any MCU movie that you watched,
MCM movie,
MCM,
everyone,
okay, there you go.
It's MCM now.
There's never those stakes, and so they really can do a lot more with this series. So if you honestly, like, if you like superheroes, you should be watching this. Like, if you Marvel, DC, anything like that, if you like those things, if you like that kind of storytelling, then this is the kind of show you should be watching. I know a lot of people are naysayers because it is animated, but you should watch it anyway.
Animation is some of the best storytelling right now.
It really is. I've been watching anime and stuff since I was like 8. So I've always been a huge fan of animation. I think that you can do stuff with storytelling in animation that you just can't do
in live action.
In live action, you just can't.
Especially like if you want to do any time manipulation things, like character aging and all
going
that
back
kind
in
of
the
stuff.
past, anything like that.
Animation's much easier to do that. You can show main characters 50 years old when they're 5 years old. Real easy.
Yeah, super easy. The same person can probably even voice them.
Yeah.
Because voice actors can do crazy things with their voices. But you can also, you can do the things with the gore. You can do superpowers that maybe would be hard to animate with computer graphics. You can do...
Or it would look like Adam Eve's power would be really tough CGI-wise.
And it would just be hard. Even in animation, it was hard to really understand what her power was initially. So I imagine that doing it live action would be very difficult. I really hope that, because Invincible's been very successful, I really hope they don't try to do a live action of it.
Well,
I just don't think it will have the same punch.
So also on Amazon is The Boys. And I would say The Boys is the closest comp to Invincible. And The Boys is its own comic series. It's good. Essentially, there's Umbrella Academy, which is more... The comics get really weird, but the Netflix show, it's kind of bright and uplifting. There's a goofier tone to it. The Boys is a darker tone than Umbrella Academy. Very similar kind of thing. And then there is Invincible, which takes The Boys and it makes it even darker and more gruesome. Because The Boys is still, I think, limited by live action, and there's still more comedic punch to it. Invincible never cared about having comedy. It was just really about devastation.
I mean, there's some funny moments, but I mean,
that's
it's
not
definitely
how it's written.
It's not written that way. It's definitely a dark show, which is funny because the color palette
is very
bright. So bright.
It's nice.
It is very bright. You would not expect it. Like you watch something like the Batman animated movies and stuff like that. They're very dark toned.
Yeah.
And they have that same kind of gruesome level to them. But you wouldn't expect it. Like this is like Simpsons level brightness. This is the kind of thing you would expect in a comedy, and I really like how they played with that. That's another fun thing about animation is you can really play with. Obviously in movies and stuff you have lighting and angles and shots like that, but to change the entire color palette like that and then having such a dark cast to the entire show, it's really cool.
Yep. So be sure to watch Invincible. It's on Amazon Prime. It's really one of the standout superhero things currently on. I'm super intrigued for season 2. They left so many plot lines open. There is so much they can do. And it's all arced based on Mark still coming to terms with what he's capable of.
It's funny because it left so much open, but it didn't feel messy. It didn't feel incomplete. They were intriguing. It was like reading a comic. It's like they leave those little tales at the end where it's not like, well, they didn't resolve this.
Yeah.
You don't get frustrated or annoyed. You're like, oh, well, I'm intrigued because here's this little tale.
What
they didn't
about
follow
that little
it.
thing? Yeah,
what about that
happen?
one astronaut? What about the cat guy? What about the Flaxons? Are they ever gonna come back? And they are. They show you in the final episode that they are. But definitely, it's 8 episodes. You could probably get a trial for Prime, so you could definitely watch it very quickly. We watched it one night at a time, and it's a little over a week, even if you do that. So. They're long episodes, but
they are. This is a 53-minute drama type of show. So keep that in mind. This isn't a 25-minute Rick and Morty episode.
It's definitely longer, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it. I mean, you've probably seen people talking about it.
There's memes.
You've probably
of
seen
it.
the memes. There's a reason that it's so popular.
Yep. So to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow @Secondary Heroes everywhere. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I had a lot of fun, Trevor. Thank you.
I hope everyone enjoys our secondary shorts. Be sure to listen to the version that Alex and his buddy Jimmy did. And be sure to stay tuned to our regular episodes coming next week. I have no idea still what we're talking about. But till then, we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.